power bombing power rankings. It's gonna get fiery. And some bold predictions. We've got all that and more. I'm Jason Fitz, and it is time for Zero Blitz. Okay, if you watch and you listen and you consume Yahoo Sports content, you've already learned that Sunday Night Blitz is maybe the single greatest show made in the history of mankind. I'm Jason Fitz, and I hang out every Sunday with Frank Schwab. We're bringing some of that magic, some of that juju, some of that wild juice over to today's show because Frank and I got beef, Frank. First and foremost, thanks so much for joining me on this beautiful, midweek show. We don't usually get to hang out midweek. Usually we're just angry texting, and now we get to do it in person instead.
I know, man. I was wondering about your, I've learned all about your Sunday habits with the donuts and the diet root beer. What's a Thursday like for you? You just pounding down Red Bulls all day, or is it calm? It's just water, salad. You're being healthy because you're just going to go nuts on Sunday.
Oh yeah, no, it's midweek health is real. So I've got a routine, as everybody can figure out. I only work in routine. I think it's all the years on the road touring, right? Like you have an app when you tour called Master Tour, and you pull it up and it literally tells you in the app what time to be where in the building every hour of the day. So I'm super regimented. So yeah, Thursdays always starts with a little Orange Theory. Got to get my fitness on. I crossed my 100,000 calorie burn point for the year so far in Orange Theory. So get that in. Then you have the protein shake, then, a little bit of chicken. And then I do this show. And then I have a little space in there. It's Thursday, a little splurge, get myself a little sashimi Thursday night. Football, we do fantasy football live tonight, live. Look, Thursdays are a day of work and focus for me, Frank. Focus.
Got it. I was just worried about your kidneys basically giving out if you're drinking all that much soda 7 days a week. But glad to hear it, man. Glad to hear you're going to be with us for a while.
Well, look, my kidneys take a beating on Sundays, and it's even weirder because now I have to space that out because we work and I like to be professional, which means, that means all of a sudden you and I finish the show at 2 a.m. and I'm pounding whiskey like it's going out of style. But I'm doing that because my favorite team sucks. And when your favorite team sucks, like mine does, you look at power rankings every week just to feel the level of suck that we're hitting. I looked at your power rankings this week and I was so upset I had to make a video about it. Now we got beef in the market. So let's get out here, Frank. I want to take a look at your power rankings. You do these every week. And, in fairness, I found myself every Saturday or every Sunday yelling about the AP Top 25 poll. So I figured, why not yell about the great Frank Schwab poll as well? Unenviable job trying to put together power rankings, but I want to group these out. All right, we'll start with the bottom of these. You got the Bears at 32, Broncos at 31. Great that we're going to get that matchup this weekend. The Panthers at 30, my beloved Raiders sitting at 29, Cardinals 28, 27 for the Texans, 26 for the Giants. Why am I listing all these teams? 25 for the Titans. What do all of those teams, most of those teams have in common? Many of those teams have, at least won a football game. And you got the Vikings sitting at 24 who haven't done a damn thing. Frank, explain yourself.
Not that everybody needs to know how I do power rankings, but I do need to explain myself here I think if you've known me for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, I'm a betting man. And I like to look at this in the lens of a betting person. How would I bet these games? If Team A was against Team B, who would I pick? Would I pick the Raiders over the Vikings just because they got a 1-point win over the Denver Broncos? No, I'd go ahead and pick the Vikings if they played on a neutral field tomorrow. The Vikings, we all talk about regression all offseason, right? Oh, the Vikings can't go 11-0 again in close games. They can't go 11-0 again in close games. They're 0-3. Like the pendulum has just swung too far for the Vikings. I do not believe the Vikings are a bad team. They're 0-3. They're pretty unlucky to be 0-3, too. I think this Vikings team is okay, whereas every team, obviously, that you listed behind them, I don't think is very good. I don't think it's good as the Vikings. I would still pick the Vikings ahead of a lot of these teams. I might pick the Vikings ahead of maybe a 2-win team or two. Sounds stupid coming out of my mouth, but it's not all about the results of the games, right? Like, that doesn't make any logical sense, but I think if you watch these games like I do, if you study the league like I do, then you realize single game outcomes do not tell us everything we need to know about the strength or weakness of a team. Schedules are different. The way a team loses is different. Look, losing by 50 to the Dolphins is a lot different than losing by 1 to the Raiders or whatever you're going to be. Like, they're just a difference. 0-1 and 1-0 is not always equal, right? Like, there are differences in wins, there are differences in losses. I like to take all of that into account. Preseason, we're still early enough in the year, too, where it's September, my preseason biases, when I do all these rankings, they still play into account too. Still got to hang on to them without being too stubborn. So that's a long way of saying I just like the Vikings better than every other team you listed, and I would pick them without a doubt on a neutral field that they play tomorrow.
So I got to walk through this power. In my mind, there's like a Frank Schwab draft board. You know, like we all see War Rooms. It's a big board with all the little logos and like magnets, and we're shuffling. Like, are we doing it that way? Are we a visual person, Frank? Are we doing it like in an Excel spreadsheet or are you just like a pad of paper scratching down names as we go? Like, how are we actually making the list?
Just in our publishing tool, I just copy and paste it from last week, move them up, move them down. I spend most of my Monday is spent, like I'll write the words, right? Like, okay, that process is done. And then I just spend hours going, because I know people like you are going to come at me. They're going to be like, how on earth and I got to be ready with an argument for every one of these teams over every other one. And sometimes, like, there's a few times when somebody will hit me up on Twitter or you text me or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I just made a mistake. Like, I would like to think it's rare in that, look, I make mistakes all the time. I'm not saying that. I'm wrong a lot. If people have followed me, they know, yeah, if you're in this business, you're going to be wrong. But I like to at least say, I could justify myself. I could argue this point against you or anybody on Twitter or any fan base or whatever, however you want to come at me.
It is funny, though, as I look at your list, Texans at 27, Cardinals at 28. We'll get to some of the good teams in a minute. But it should be pointed out, like, those are two teams that are low on your rankings. That it's funny when you look at it in perspective. I think you're right, actually. Most of the teams ahead of them on a neutral field, I would favor the other team every single day. Your logic is 100% right. It also speaks to where our expectations were, though, that we're sitting here saying, man, Cardinals way better than we expected. They're all the way up to 28 on the power rankings. Like, it speaks to what we thought we were going to see there.
Man, I thought the Cardinals were going to be one of the worst teams of all time. Like, I really did. Like, you look at their roster, they traded for Joshua Dobbs like a minute and a half before the season. And it's like, not necessarily tanking, but okay, there's a lost season. We're not out here to get better. We're just out here we're going to put a team on the field and we're going to go 2-15 and get Caleb. They have been so much better than I expected. And all these people clowning Jonathan Gannon over some pep talk he gave to the team in a meeting room, it looks kind of foolish now because that dude might be a good coach. Like, he's got them playing really hard and really well. I mean, they've covered the spread 3 times. Again, I'm a betting man. I look at these things. They're beating the market. They're much better than we thought. I actually have enjoyed watching the Cardinals play, and they Look, usually when there's a big upset, it's this team turned it over 5 times. They won on a field goal that doinked twice off the crossbar and went in. There's nothing lucky about the Cardinals beating the Cowboys. They beat them. They lined up and said, we're going to run it down your mouth, and they got 222 on them. So hats off to the Cardinals, man. Yeah, I realize they're still pretty low because you can't get them too high on this ranking, but they could easily be 3-0, man. We talked about that Sunday night.
Well, and what's interesting, we'll get to the Cowboys side of this in a second. I think the most interesting thing is that we live in such a copycat league. The minute one team sees it, everybody tries to replicate it, right? So right now, until otherwise proven, there's going to be a book when playing the Cowboys of, okay, how do we try and do exactly that? How do we run the ball right down their throats? And that, to me, that's incredibly interesting. Like, even if the Cardinals end up not great, and the Cowboys struggle defending the run, at some point you're going to look at it and say, man, the Cardinals were the one that opened up Pandora's box for the rest of the league to figure out how to attack these Cowboys. And we all know that's what's going to happen. Like, there's no way your scouts, your advanced scouts that are looking at film right now for your upcoming opponents aren't looking at that and saying, okay, we just watched the Cardinals out physical at the point of attack the Cowboys. Like, everybody's going to try and do that starting with next week, right? Like the Cardinals, the Cardinals are not that good of a running team. It means that the Cowboys just didn't bring it.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, Dan Quinn went into the office on Monday and said, how do we fix this? Like, that's the beauty of the NFL. These dudes there's a reason they sleep at the office and they work 120 hours a week and all that. They are on top of their stuff, man. And you're right. Yeah. Everybody in the league who's going to play the Cowboys, like, wow, what do Cardinals do? Let's look at that. Let's see how we can exploit that. And on the other side, at the Star, Dan Quinn and all of his defensive coaches say, what the heck happened? How do we fix this? It's a cat and mouse game that goes along in the NFL every single week through the season. When
I take a look at the next grouping of teams, we'll start at 23 in your power rankings. Rams at 23, Jets at 22, Jags at 21, Bucks at 20, Colts at 19, Chargers at 18, Patriots 17, Commanders 16, Falcons 15. I'm going through this list because, again, as I say some of these names, it speaks to some of the early season surprises where I don't disagree with you. I'm just a little shooketh, right? That we got the Jags sitting at 21 while we got the Colts and the Buccaneers ahead of them. And I don't think that's unjust, right? Like if you look, frankly, just watch the Jags, right? And this comes back to your point of it's not just about wins and losses. Just watch the Jags. It all looks out of sync. Trevor Lawrence doesn't look like himself. Nothing about their offense looks the way it looked last year. I don't know what's wrong with the Jags right now, but I'm not sure what's right with the Jags either. And that suddenly leads you to the surprise where even with Gardner Minshew, the Colts are sitting ahead of them at 19 in your power rankings.
I didn't expect that. But I also, over the summer, you could make yourself an argument of if Anthony, this is the flaw in it, right? If Anthony Richardson is Superman right away, this team could actually be pretty good. I was picking them to win the AFC South last year before the season. That didn't work out. Spoiler alert, Fitz. They did not win the AFC South last year. But the roster wasn't one of these like, they're hopeless, they're terrible, they're going to be terrible for 3 years. It's like they actually got some dudes. Now, Anthony Richardson has played well, but it's Gardner Minshew who gets their big win, right? You go on the road and you beat the Baltimore Ravens. I don't care if the Ravens are beat up. I got to take notice of that. I got to say, man, maybe the Colts are good. And I think a world of Richardson right now. We both do. We both look at this kid and are like, this is Cam Newton again. This is it. And again, I feel bad because it's a lazy comparison and all that. But when you see this guy play at ball, it's like that. Yeah, he belongs in the NFL right now. And he comes back this week. Interested to see where the Colts go this year.
One of the craziest things I'll never be able to explain about last year was how the Colts offensive line went from being one of the best in the league to just being abysmal. And nobody, I talked to every fat guy I could, and like I couldn't get a good explanation from anybody. It feels like they've righted some of that, and to think that they won with Gardner Minshew and they still haven't had Jonathan Taylor, I don't know. The Colts early surprise in the season. I didn't mind them being where they were in the rankings at all. I don't love. You've got the Steelers at 14. Look, Steelers, Saints, Packers, Bengals, Seahawks. That's 14 through 10. The Steelers suck. All right, Frank, I got to say this. Like, I know they beat the Raiders. And like, all right, ta-da, congratulations, you beat the Raiders. Like, my beloved Raiders are not good. It's not a hot take. But the Steelers, nothing looks easy when they do it on the offensive side of the ball. I don't trust Pittsburgh at all at 14. Like, right now, neutral field, I don't know that I think the Steelers could actually score in the Patriots. I think Mac Jones sucks, but so do the Steelers offense. Like the Chargers neutral field, they beat the Steelers. You got Steelers too high, Frank.
I might have the Steelers too high. You're right. Like their offense looks broken. But part of this whole, like you have them too high or how did you move this team down or whatever. You might be right about some of the Patriots maybe, but the Patriots offense, I think their last 7 possessions against the Jets were punt, 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 punt. Like the Patriots got their issues too now. Like let's not act like the Patriots are all that great. So I mean, you got to look at the teams behind them and which of these teams do you love? Which of these teams are you saying they're definitely better than Steelers? I would take them over that front 7 with TJ Watt and Highsmith. Like the Steelers do bring some things to the table. They are good, but I will say of all the games this weekend, the one when I did my picks. And maybe I'm going to change it like, when I actually take some money to the counter, I was like, am I really picking the Steelers -3 over the Texans? The Texans look good last week. I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. That's the one thing I hate. We're going to talk about this with the team in the top 10 who you don't think should be as low as they are. Mm-hmm. I hate the whole prisoner of the moment thing with the NFL coverage. It is, what did they do last week? Well, the Houston Texans also, week 2 got blown off the field by the Colts, who lost their quarterback 10 snaps into the game or whatever. So it all adds up. But yes, I am a little worried about the Steelers because that offense, it's a Matt Canada thing, right? Like at some point, the fans are correct in ripping an offense coordinator because my God, if they run one more time on 2nd and 11, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, please stop. That is the worst play in football. Running on 2nd and long is the dumbest thing you could do. And they do it every single time they're in that situation.
I'm going to turn you saying punt 7 times. Punt, 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 punt. Yeah.
Did I get that right? Did I say it? I wasn't counting in my head.
You said it 7 times. Only reason I thought about it is the rhythm with which you said it reminded me of Old McDonald, like punt, 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 punt.
That was the Patriots offense in the second half. It's even more the Jets offense. So,
Now when the Raiders have their 7th or 8th punt in a row, I'm just going to go around my living room going punt, 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 with a punt, punt here and a punt. Okay, I got to stop. The Bengals are at 11. I mean,
it goes. Look, I hate giving up too. Like, do we really think the Bengals stink? Like, we talked all off season about Bengals going to win the Super Bowl. Bengals are a Super Bowl contender, and they haven't looked good so far. I don't know what's broken. Like, there's something broken in this offense where they cannot get anything going downfield. But I also don't want to look up and somebody says, hey, remember week 3 when you had the Bengals at 26? At some point, you just have to have some faith that they're going to figure this thing out. They're a slow starting team. We all know that. And at some point, you just have to say, I'm going to be a little stubborn on the Bengals and say, I don't think this is a bad team all of a sudden. It's not like they lost Joe Burrow for the season. No, he's still out there. He might be compromised a bit, but where are you at? I mean, do you think the Bengals are that bad? I don't think they're a bad team. I don't know what's going on with them, though.
Right. So this is the weird spot where if I had to bet your house, because I'm not betting mine, on the Bengals for the rest of the season, am I going to bet against them? No. But as we've talked about a bunch, Joe Burrow doesn't look right? And I think, honestly, at this point, I'd shut him down for the next 4 to 6 weeks, take all the L's that I have to take and try and get that calf
But then
right.
you're giving up your season at that point. Like,
are you, though? Like, as long as you get him with
if you, let's say you sit him 5, let's go in the middle there. You sit him 5 weeks. What's the record of Jake Browning? 1-4? Like,
best case.
So you're 2-6 at that point. You may go playoffs. You're done.
You go through a run. You're going to run 2-6, but then you got a healthy.
Just run the table.
Then you run the table. You get in the playoffs, and I mean then it's easy. Like, okay, you do make a point that you can't take that big of a hole, but I just don't know.
I don't know what the Bengals should do, honestly. Like, even talking about sitting them week 3. And I was at the gym the other day and saw the headline on a show that I don't really want to give much attention to. Did the Bengals make a mistake playing Joe Burrow? I'm like, didn't they win last night? Like, what are we talking about? What are we doing here? Like, but I get it. Like, you sit Joe Burrow, your season's almost done. There's been one of 99 teams since 2002 to make the playoffs after starting 0-3. Like, 0-3 is a death sentence. You're done. Your season's over. So I don't really but you're also, this is the franchise. He's 25 years old or whatever he is. What do you do? I don't know what the Bengals should do. I really don't. Like, it's obviously Joe Burrow is not the same guy right now, but he gives you the best chance to win, and you need to win games.
Yeah, the hardest part about it is they're only going to be judged based on what happens in January without any context of what this means or what this causes. So right. I'm with you. I think the next few show you that there are plenty of broken teams still, like the Seahawks at 10, the Ravens at 9.
Like, you just look at the Seahawks at 10 and you're like, what? But who are you going to pick? Who below them? Do I like the Packers that much more? Do I like the Saints without Derek Carr that much more? I don't know. Go on.
No, but I think that's like, there are fatal flaws to the Seahawks. The Ravens offense hasn't looked the way the Ravens offense I thought would look at. I'm still sort of in wait-and-see mode. I'm not going to overreact to one decent game by Deshaun Watson before I say the Browns are fixed, even if their defense is incredible. The Lions have been very good. I'll say the Lions have been very good at 7. But then you say you're not going to overreact to one outcome, and the Cowboys plummet from 3 to 6. From 3 to 6 for a loss to the plucky Cardinals. How is that possible? You really want to tell me the Cowboys are only the 6th best team in the NFL right now, Frank?
All right, go through the top 5, because I want you to tell me which of those teams should be below the Cowboys. Go through the top 5.
Okay, well, okay, fine.
We'll
the top 5,
back.
which the top 5 are broken. We'll include the top 6. We'll go college football playoff on this. The top 6 is broken. At 6, the Dallas Cowboys. At 5.
We'll get to these guys. Don't worry.
The Miami Dolphins.
So you obviously don't think they're worse than the Cowboys, so go on.
At 4, the Bills. At 3, the Chiefs. At 2, the Eagles. At 1, the 49ers. Okay, so the Eagles.
So you're doing power rankings. You're doing what I do on Monday on my couch for a couple hours. Who's below the Cowboys? Who's below the Cowboys?
Okay, I would put the Cowboys. If I was doing the power rankings, the Dolphins go to 1, the 49ers go to 2. The Bills go to 3. How do you like that? The Eagles go to 4, even though, the Eagles haven't looked bad, but it hasn't been right.
It's funny. They look terrible, but they're winning by double digits every week.
Yeah,
it's like,
I know, that's always
yeah, they're terrible.
I don't know. Maybe I put the Dolphins at 4. I can see putting the Dolphins ahead of the Chiefs, who haven't looked right yet, and the Eagles, who haven't looked right. They're winning games, but they haven't looked right. So, this is back to the whole wins and losses versus the eye test. The Cowboys this year have had moments where they look delightful. They had one game where it felt like they were half asleep and they didn't come. They didn't bring it. It didn't get brought in.
You're absolutely right about that. And I hate to overreact on the Cowboys too much, because they've looked great, and if they just produce in the red zone a little bit more against Arizona, I probably don't move them down that much, right? Like, Dak couldn't get it done in the red zone. It happens, whatever. But the teams ahead of the Chiefs, probably, the Chiefs offense has been whatever. They also put up 34 points and a half. I get it. It was against a little league team last week. It doesn't matter, whatever. But the thing about the Chiefs that is the most underappreciated storyline of the NFL season right now, the Chiefs defense is good. Nobody's talking about this. Nobody. I've talked about it each week, and it still hasn't taken off. And we're going to wake up in the middle of October, and somebody's going to tweet like, oh my God, the Chiefs defense is good. And everybody's going to say, wow, the Chiefs defense is good. How come we hadn't noticed that before? The Chiefs defense is playing at like a top 5 level right now. They gave up nothing to the Bears, who stink. I get that. They gave up nothing to the Jaguars, who don't stink. They didn't get in the end zone once. They gave up 2 touchdowns to the Lions, who are a pretty good football team. That's it. That's all they've given up in 3 weeks. If you pair this Chiefs defense with the offense we all know is coming, we all know they're going to get it together. Patrick Mahomes ain't going to have a bad year. We know that. The Chiefs are a top 5 team. They're a Super Bowl contender again. Like I'm not putting them below the Cowboys. I'm not making that mistake.
That's a really strong argument. You know, I think seeing some of the offensive struggles against good teams has, it's a little seared in my brain, but we've also seen, Josh Allen regress week 1. So like there have been forgettable moments. You're talking me into this. There have been forgettable moments for the Cowboys, the Chiefs, and the Bills, all 3 of them early on in the season. When they've looked good, they've all looked unstoppable. When they've beaten themselves, it's been tough to watch. So
yes, the Kadarius Toney game, like I mean, you're talking about the Chiefs being 2-1 right now. It's like if Kadarius Toney only drops like 5 passes instead of 7, like they're 3-0 and they're probably number 1 in these power rankings.
I'll buy what you're selling there. I won't buy the Dolphins. Look, you score 70 points in a game against an NFL opponent. You give the absolute ultimate slap in the face of being like, we could set the scoring record, but we will simply choose not to. So
that's almost worse about the Broncos. I'm like, bring it. Don't take a knee on 4th. Bring it on. Like, if we can't stop you, we can't stop you. I think it's more embarrassing that they're like, no, we're going to take a knee. We're going to take it easy on you guys.
Wasn't it?
We're not going to run it up.
This is an old man analogy here, but I don't know if you were a big Karate Kid fan as a kid.
What are you talking about? Okay. Yes, of course.
All right. So I think it was Ralph Macchio that did the whole, like, got the guy down and they were like, finish him basically. And he went down and he honked the nose instead of like, honk, and didn't do it. And like took the high road. That's what Mike McDaniel just did.
That was Mike McDaniel. Yeah.
Mike McDaniel's Ralph Macchio. They both are sneaky, young looking. They're both kind of weird when they talk, and they both honk the nose of their opponent when they can take them out. Like, but you score 70, you go full Madden mode in an NFL game, you get to the top of the list. Like, to your point, I will say this: if I today had to bet both of our houses on a neutral field between the Dolphins and any of the teams ahead of them today, I would place that bet nervously on Miami. I don't think I would bet on anybody against the Dolphins.
You know what? I'm totally good with it. I actually am. I'm good with that because I think so many people who do power rankings or whatever, they wouldn't go. They'd be like, oh, I got the Dolphins number 1. They're the greatest offense of all time. All this hype we're hearing this week, it's crazy. But if you actually said, like, okay, if they're playing on a neutral field, would you take them over the 49ers? They'd be like, no, I take the 49ers. Well, then you're not doing power rankings, you're doing standings, okay? Like, that's the difference here. We're talking about which teams have looked the best, which teams pass the eye test. I don't go crazy on recency bias. The recency bias is the Dolphins looked unbelievable on Sunday. They were incredible. I'm not taking anything away from what they did. The week before, week 2, you know how many points they scored in their final 7 possessions? Against the only good defense they played, the New England Patriots. You know how many points they scored in their final 7 possessions? Greatest offense of all time, I've heard this week many, many times. You know how many points against the one defense they played? 7 points and 7 possessions against the Patriots to end the game. Look, they won that game. It was a great win. A great win against San Diego. Or I always call them San Diego. I'll call them San Diego until my dying day, Fitz. Trust me.
I don't blame you.
The great week 1 against the Chargers. I mean, it was a great comeback win, 466 yards passing. But it's the whole thing. It's not just what we saw last. And let me ask you this. If Mike McDaniel had honked the nose of Sean Payton earlier and just said, we're going to shut down for the 4th quarter. We're not going to have our backups just run it up on you. They were at 49 points at the end of the 3rd quarter. Let's just say they were like, whatever, we're not doing this. We're just going to let it go. Like the Chiefs did, basically. The Chiefs could have scored 60-some if they wanted to on Sunday against the Bears. If they won that game 49-13, which it was after the 3rd quarter, would you have the Dolphins first? Yeah, but you have them first because their backup scored a lot of points against the Broncos backups in the 4th quarter, garbage time. Like, that's what I'm trying not to get too far ahead of myself with the Dolphins. I like the Dolphins. They are fun. They are incredible. They might be one of the best offenses of all time. We'll see by the end of the year, but it's 3 games. And I'm telling you right now, I just posted my picks. I got the Bills all day, every day on Sunday. We love talking about 70 points, right? 70 points. Oh my God, this is the greatest. I've heard greatest offense ever so often in my timeline this week. It's like, we're just casually throwing that out there. Like, okay, a week ago you thought Tua was just he's just a guy. He doesn't have that much arm strength. He's just a guy. All of a sudden he's orchestrating the greatest offense. Fine, whatever. But it's fun to talk about 70 points. It's not so fun to talk about a defense that had 9 sacks, 5 turnovers, scored itself on an interception return, had a shutout until the Commanders just decided on a random field goal in the final minute to avoid a shutout. The Bills are good too, okay? Like, the Bills are going to win on Sunday. I'll say it right now. And if I'm wrong, I will be here on Sunday night with you, and I'll take the L. But the Bills are going to win on Sunday. They're a better overall team. They have been for a couple of years. I still need the Dolphins to prove it. I'm not one of these guys who's just turning my opinion around after 3 games. They look great. They look awesome. They're fun. I like watching them. I think Tua is having an awesome year. Doesn't get the respect he deserves. But I'd like to see them do this against a great defense, too. And the Bills do have a great defense.
We're going to let our producer extraordinaire Stone decide what our bet is for this game, because I'm all in on the Dolphins over the Bills. We'll figure out what a show bet is for Sunday Night Blitz, obviously, because one thing I know is we'll be fired up about it. Before we leave the power bombing of your power rankings, and by the way, you've done a beautiful job defending them. I appreciate that. I have been the voice of the fan.
On Monday, in my head, I'm like, okay, if somebody asks me, why do I have this team ahead of this team? What am I going to say? That's what I do for hours.
I love the honesty.
It's kind of a miserable existence. Like, what am I doing here?
No, because for years I've had fans, like, they'll come up to me all the time and be like, I love that you ask what fans ask. So, like, I have the rare opportunity to go at the guy that makes the power rankings. I'm going to do it. Look at your list, though. Is there, and this could be good or bad, is there anybody that you look at on your list and you think, man, not now, but by the end of the year, this will be a totally fraudulent ranking, too low, too high. Like, this team will be nowhere near where they are ranked when the season ends?
Jaguars. I can't give them up. I was so in on them over the offseason. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes in my rankings, I just get mad at a team. Like, I do this in my head, right? I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not talking to Doug Peterson or anybody, but I'm like, I'm putting you on timeout. You're going all the way down to 21. I don't like that you're making me look foolish with this 1-2 start losing to the Houston Texans and losing one of my survivor pool picks. You're all the way down to 21. You're grounded this week. That's what I did with the Jaguars. I probably put them a little further down than I really think they are. I don't think this is the 21st best team in football. I think they're a lot better than that. I think Trevor's going to get it going. I actually think they win on Sunday in London against the Falcons. But yeah, so of all the rankings where I'm like, I don't want to say I don't believe it. I do believe it, but I also think that it's going to change very quickly. The Jaguars, are they just bad? I don't think they're just bad. Are they? What do you think? I mean,
no, but here's the hardest part.
They don't look good. They don't look good so far, but I don't know.
And the hardest part about that is, think about this. Like, when we start talking about the Jags don't look good, part of the reason the Jags haven't looked good is that Trevor Lawrence hasn't looked good, right? Like, Trevor Lawrence doesn't look comfortable. At this point, we are now, because it was all the previous coaching regime's fault. Doug Peterson fixes it, right? Well, what do you do if now the more body of work you're getting, the more it's like, man, Trevor, because we're talking about Caleb Williams right now a lot like we talked about Trevor Lawrence and Andrew Luck before him. Like, everybody's like, this is a can't miss the next John Elway. I was standing on the sidelines for his college career when people were saying he should sue the NFL to allow earlier entry into the league because he was, after 1 year, because he was the next John Elway. Right now, he looks like he's pretty good, but like, there's this, I say this phrase all the time, but Trevor giveth and Trevor taketh away. Like, he has some boneheaded throws. You're like, what are you doing? And it's just, nothing looks comfortable. I think the most curious part is that if the Jags go off the rails this year and they suck, we're going to have a much different conversation about Trevor Lawrence than anyone covering football thought that we would.
Yeah, he was my MVP pick. Look, I'll take L's right now. I thought the Jaguars, based on their schedule, could be the number 1 seed in the AFC while everybody kind of beat each other up. Thought they're going to win this division by 3-4 games. I thought, obviously, Trevor's going to the moon. Calvin Ridley's going to the moon with him. It hasn't happened yet. And it's troubling. Like, he has missed throws where you're like, I thought we were over this, Trevor. I thought that this wasn't happening anymore. You finished last season so well, and you look like a future star. He's regressed. He is, and I'm not saying that regression is going to be permanent. I do think he's going to turn around. I think he's going to have a fantastic season. But like you said, we get to the end of this season and they miss the playoffs and Trevor kind of looks like this the rest of the season. It's gonna be like, what happened? You're gonna have to pay him pretty soon. Like, this decision's coming up for the Jaguars. You're gonna give him the 5th year option, of course, but you giving him the Herbert extension? You giving him the Jalen Hurts extension? I think so. But right now, oh man, it's It's not what I expected out of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's put it that way.
I think if I look at your list, and I think there's a couple of teams that are going to free fall from where they are. The Steelers and the Falcons are two teams that I don't believe in the Steelers. I don't believe in the Falcons. And the Falcons are doing enough to win, but I don't believe.
You know what I should have put? I should have put the Falcons at 16 because they are the most average team in the NFL. They could beat a bad team. They've shown that. They can go out there. If you're a bad team, we're going to beat you. But a good team, like, we just don't have the upside for it. I think that's where the Falcons are. Like, they're going to be 8 or 9 wins. They're going to be exactly in the middle of the pack. I don't think they're bad, but when you settle for Desmond Ridder, quarterback, this is kind of what you get. When you get grumpy about everybody asking, why don't you get Kyle Pitts the ball? Why don't you get Drake London the ball? Oh, that's fantasy football. When you're targeting Jonnu Smith or when you're targeting Kyle Pitts, you end up with an average team because Jonnu Smith is average. Like, this is what Tyler Algier is kind of average. Like, get your best players the ball, Arthur Smith. But I just think that their ceiling is limited and they're an average team. They're not bad. I disagree with that. I don't think the Falcons are going to be like 25 by the end of the year. I think they're going to be perfectly average NFL team, right in a playoff race all year, but just not the ceiling to beat any good teams.
But you've sort of hit on what is my calling card for the week and everybody I'm talking to. And it's obviously grounded in the fact that I watched my favorite team just look awful on Sunday. But here's this thing. We get so consumed with what our favorite team's record are because in your mind, it's like, well, if you make the playoffs, if you get in the dance, you got a chance. It's fine. I understand why. I think we as fans have to start asking different questions sometimes. Like, there's a different question between, does my team have a good record and is my team actually good? Like,
right.
As much as we watch, all of us watch every single game for our favorite teams and you watch the whole league, like, at some point you got to ask yourself, when my team does these things, does it look as easy as when this team does these things? Like, is my team capable of beating this team any given Sunday? And there's a bunch of us that are like me out there that have, fandom of teams that suck. And every year you come in and say, man, I just want to make the playoffs this year. I have changed my whole method of what I'm asking for as a fan. I honestly, right now, I don't care about wins and losses. I care about watching a team and saying, man, I am watching a competent football team that's doing very good things, because it's been so long since I've seen that. And I think if you're a Falcons fan, if you're a Steelers fan, like, there's a fine line for a lot of these teams where you're looking at it saying, I want to win games, but I also want my football team to be really good. And that's why if you're a Bengals fan, you're frustrated because you're losing games and your team is supposed to be really good. Like, I no longer just want a team with a winning record. I want a good football team to watch every Sunday. That might take the next 30 years, but that's what I want, Frank.
See, your team didn't trade for Damian Lillard yesterday, because my favorite team with Dame time yesterday just had to get that plug in there. Go Bucks, love it. No, go ahead, Fitz. If you want to talk Bucks, you want to talk some Bucks basketball here? Like, I'll do it. I love them.
I'll tell you this right off the bat. I don't have a favorite NBA team. I haven't had a favorite NBA team since I was a kid. I grew up a Lakers fan as a kid in Vegas. Everybody was. But as I became an adult, that sort of died off, unfortunately for me, because it turned out they were really good for a long time. But a couple of years ago, I was talking so much about the Bucks and why they were disrespected in the year before they won their championship, that one of the guys that works for the team, like the team owner, used to listen to me on radio. One of the guys that works for the team DM'd me and was like, hey, can you shoot me an address? And I thought it was a fraudulent thing, so I gave him the ESPN address at the time, and I'm like, whatever. I got the biggest box of Bucks swag that you will ever see in your life. And like, a buddy of mine that is a huge Bucks fan, I gave a bunch of it to him. Like, I'm all in on the Bucks. I've got this. I've told you before. I've got this love for Milwaukee. I'm all in on the Bucks. So like, maybe this NBA season, Schwab and Frank and Fitz, we go to a Milwaukee. I got a ticket hookup, man. I can get us into the game.
That's a beautiful arena. Beautiful. I was there for Game 4 of the 2021 Finals. Have I mentioned they won the 2021 championship? Because they did. The Bucks won that. Yeah. If I might have been shopping for some Bucks gear about 1 o'clock Mountain Time yesterday. I'm like, a little bit fired up. But anyway, back to your point on NFL teams. Yes, I mean, it's all sliding scale. If you are a Bengals fan right now, you're like, oh my God, the world's falling. Whereas if, you're a Cardinals fan, you're like, wow, this is so much better than I thought. Whereas if the Bengals and Cardinals played tomorrow, you're picking the Bengals, I assume. But I mean, the thing about power rankings, just general talk about NFL, is just the week to week crazy overreactions. you have one good game. The Raiders go out and win. They beat the Chargers this week. Next week, it's just going to be you're going to be in your bag. Like, oh my God, they're 2-2. They look good. Josh is awesome. If they go out and lose to Brandon Staley, like Josh McDaniels can't figure out when to kick a field goal again. You're going to be like, oh, fire McDaniels. Like, this is why the NFL is beautiful. This is why we love it. This is why everybody tunes in.
That brings me, Frank, to something we like to do on this show, which is bold predictions. And you can get as weird as you want. Like, I don't care if you want a bold prediction to be that a streaker runs through the game, stops it for 15 minutes, whatever your bold prediction you want. I'm gonna start us off. You want a bold prediction right here? I'm gonna give you a bold prediction. The loser, the head coach that loses the game between the Raiders and the Chargers, will actually be on the hot seat. I can see the loser of that game. I can see the coach that loses that game. Never mind. I'm going to even go bolder. The coach that loses that game getting fired.
Wow, loser leaves town. We got a loser leaves town.
We got a straight 80s wrestling loser leaves town match. Let's go. I love
that reference. Let's do it. Let's talk real quick about the coaches getting fired, because there is another guy in Chicago who's really trying to do this. Who's the first coach fired? Who do you think? Who are you putting your chips on?
So I think the Raiders, I don't usually say this, especially.
They wouldn't dump McDaniels this quick.
No, I think the Raiders are going to beat the Chargers. I think the Raiders are going to beat the Chargers.
But if they lose, they're not dumping McDaniels. As much as I give Josh McDaniels a hard time, there's no way Mark is firing him. No way.
I don't know. I don't know, man. After the math last time, I think Eberflus and Staley are the two most likely. I think the Raiders are going to beat the Chargers. That's going to make it easy. I think the Broncos are going to beat the Bears. So I could see Eberflus going like next week if that gets ugly. If a team gives up 70 points and then turns around and whoops another team's ass,
they're favored by 3.5 on the road. That blew my mind this week. Where I'm like, a team that just gave up 70 and is 0-3 is a 3.5 point favorite on the road. That's how bad the Bears are right now. My goodness. Yeah, Eberflus has to kind of be the guy, like, I guess, but the Bears don't like firing coaches in midseason for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the Bears also don't like winning games right now. For an iconic franchise in an iconic stadium.
That's the thing. It's an iconic franchise. Iconicness. Is that a word? Whatever. Yeah, it goes back to like there's one season since 1963. Like I had so many Bears fans, friends, whatever in my orbit. They still talk about 1985 every time I see them. Like, man, that was a long time ago. Gary Fensick, man. I get it. He was cool, but you might want to win some games in the last 4 decades. Like,
I think the thing is, though, like, Frank, you're forgetting the nostalgia that we, like, for an entire age group. Like, I wasn't a Bears fan as a kid, but damn sure wasn't rooting against Jim McMahon. He was so cool.
That team was awesome.
Jim McMahon was cool, right? Like, so all of a sudden, if you were like anywhere from, 8 years old to 15 years old in that window, they were like rock stars, right? Like they were the equivalent of whatever your favorite band was from the era. So even though they haven't made a hit record in a long time, people still living on that nostalgia of the Bears. Like you're right. They haven't been good in so long that we shouldn't talk about.
If you just look at them objectively, bad franchise, really bad franchise. What have they done for forever? Really, like did one Super Bowl run with Rex Grossman of all people. Like other than that, though, bold prediction though, I'm going to go crazy here, Fitz. I think the Buffalo Bills will hold the Miami Dolphins, the combination of the 1951 Rams, 1999 Rams, like the 1989 Niners. I think they'll hold them to like one field goal and the rest will be touchdowns. They might keep them under 100 in this game because all I've heard all week is the Dolphins can't be stopped. They might not punt until 2025. The Dolphins, who by the way, a week ago, you thought their quarterback stunk and shouldn't have been drafted ahead of Justin Herbert. They are never going to be stopped. They're never going to lose a game. The Miami Dolphins are the greatest thing we've ever seen in professional football. I'm here to tell you, I think maybe the Buffalo Bills stopped them like a field goal once, maybe like Tua trips over center or something like that. Because you can't possibly stop this Dolphins offense from what I've heard. They're the greatest thing going. But really, my bold prediction is I think the Arizona Cardinals keep it close against the Niners. I just had this spidey sense. I can't look, the NFL, so much NFL analysis is about saying, I can't explain why I think this way, but then it's going to happen on Sunday. I didn't think the Cowboys were going to lose against the Arizona Cardinals. I got a survivor pool entry to prove that. The Cardinals are scrappy, man. I don't know how they're doing it. I can't explain it. I think the 49ers have been awesome. I've already taken the L on that and said they're the best team of football. I just got this feeling like we're going to be sitting there like, are the Cardinals going to pull this off? Like, are the Cardinals, they got a shot. They got the ball down 6 with 4 minutes to go. Are they beating the 49ers? Because weird stuff like that happens every Sunday.
I I don't think the Cardinals will win that game. But as you mentioned before, you and I both like to dabble in the fine art of gambling. And this has been a game, not to take the cop out. This has been a game I've stayed away from. I don't know what to make of the Cardinals right now. I believe that the 49ers are, if I was making power rankings, I would have the 49ers as the number 2 team in the NFL. And that defense is absolutely incredible. I give them nothing but a ton of credit. Weird things happen. This is one of those weird years with the Cardinals. And, frankly, I was wildly confident in the Cowboys, and maybe that has shook my confidence here. And I'm not sure that's fair to displace that. But, man, to your point, this Cardinals team every single week has been competitive with a bunch of guys that shouldn't be competitive, with a roster that was supposed to be tank worthy. Jonathan Gannon's got them playing well enough to win these football games. There's something to it. They are, I keep using this word, but they are plucky to the point of annoyance in this NFL season. I'm not putting anything past the Cardinals week in and week out.
Oh, I expected my survivor pool picks. At the beginning of the year, I was like, all right, who are Cardinals playing? Every week, just going to go against them. And not anymore. I'll go against the Bears, probably. That's probably going to be a strategy. Go for the Broncos. They can't this week, but because God knows I don't want to lose on the Broncos. But yeah, this Cardinals team, and confidence is a big thing in the NFL. And now they just beat the Cowboys. We're not scared of the 49ers. We just beat the Cowboys. Why would we be scared of you guys? I don't know, man. They might lose 42-3 for all I know. But I just don't know. Weird stuff in the NFL. It happens every week. And if you have the 49ers available in survivor pools, everybody's pick is going to be the 49ers this week. And you know what happens when that's the case.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong, and now I'm suddenly nervous about all of it. I'm not nervous about Sunday, where I will continue my trash talking to you. We've got plenty more coming up on the show, but Frank, your time here is done. You've defended your rankings to the best that they can be defended. I can promise you one thing: the trash talking will be at a 10 Sunday night when we are back together for Sunday Night Blitz. Frank, as always, my friend, I appreciate you hanging out with me. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely, man.
All right, you guys know what to do at this point. You got to get out there. You got to leave us that 5-star review. You got to rate. You got to subscribe. You got to tell your friends, your family, enemies, everybody to hang out with us. I'll be back Sunday night with Frank. The trash talking will continue for Sunday Night Blitz. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Jason Fitz. And, of course, follow Stone at SJ Rochelle. He's doing God's work behind the glass. Thanks for hanging out. We'll be back next week with more Zero Blitz.